Hello guys and welcome back to the F1 Tube YouTube channel, and in today's video, a slightly less controversial video, let's say, I will be looking at whether Pierre Gasly will ultimately be dropped from the Red Bull senior team during the 2019 season or for the 2020 season. I will be reviewing Pierre's season so far, and I will come to a conclusion whether Pierre will be dropped from the Red Bull team this season or for next season. But let's start off by looking at Pierre's 2019 Formula 1 season so far. Let's start off with round 1 of the season, which was the Australian Grand Prix, and Pierre's weekend was really hampered by Red Bull really misjudging Q1. Basically, track evolution meant that cars that went out at the end really made a lot of improvement in their lap times, and Pierre was one of the drivers that didn't go out on track, and as the session unfolded, he was relegated into the Q1 drop zone. In the race, Pierre finished P11, but to me he just was not aggressive enough in passing Daniil Kvyat for P10, and that is an underwhelming performance, but I can just about tolerate it, being Pierre's first race for Red Bull and he doesn't want to bin it initially. And we do have to remember that Albert Park is not the easiest track to overtake in, but I don't think Pierre's performance on Sunday at the Australian Grand Prix was that impressive. Then in Bahrain, Gasly had absolutely no pace the entire weekend. He was knocked out in Q2 on merit, and although he did recover to finish P8 in the race, that was partly because other people were retiring from the race, having spins or whatever. For example, the two Renaults in the last 5 laps of the race, Ricciardo and Hülkenberg, who were in really strong points paying positions. And of course this is not Pierre's fault, but it is his fault that he just wasn't quick enough. So in the first 2 races of the season, Pierre picked up 4 points, so his best finish was an 8th place. Max Verstappen had a 3rd place and a 4th place to his name. Now, yes, of course, I don't expect Gasly to parallel Verstappen's pace and results. However, I do expect him to be a lot closer than what he was. For me, China was the race that you'd expect Pierre Gasly to run. He wouldn't have enough pace to trouble the top 5, but he would have enough pace to really cruise ahead of the best of the rest. Now, of course, he needed the softer tyre to qualify, while the cars ahead of him used the harder tyre to qualify for Q3, for example, illustrating Pierre's pace. However, if that's what Pierre can amass, then I think Red Bull can be somewhat satisfied with that. For Baku, Pierre had to start at the back of the grid, or actually, I'm not sure if he started from the pit lane or back of the grid, but basically his weekend was hampered through a misjudgment between driver and team during practice. But in the race, Pierre showed some real good pace to really get ahead of the midfield pack as quick as he did, and although he did retire, I think this performance was somewhat impressive from Gasly's 2019 standards. In Spain, Gasly basically ran the same race as China. He didn't have quite enough pace to trouble the cars ahead of him, but he was just dominant ahead of the rest of the cars. And although I do think he was relatively close to Vettel and Leclerc in the first stint, I don't think it was that impressive of a performance, considering that his teammates finished on the podium and drove an excellent race. And no, before you ask, I am not going to compare Max Verstappen's and Pierre Gasly's careers to date. In Monaco, Gasly had somewhat strong pace. He did qualify P5 and eventually finish P5. However, he did muck up his weekends through driver error after blocking Romain Grosjean during qualifying. That meant he had a grid penalty, and in the race, well, you can't really overtake at Monaco, so it was always hard for Pierre to get back up into P5 relatively early in the Grand Prix. But considering a Ferrari driver in Charles Leclerc retired from the race, if Pierre is getting that P5, then he is bringing points home for Red Bull, which Ferrari did not seize. But then I think Pierre's season really did hit a low point, and it's basically a string since this race, and it is the Canadian Grand Prix. Now, although he did qualify P5 and out-qualify a Mercedes and Valtteri Bottas, he got out-qualified by a Renault. Now, of course, he did out-qualify Max Verstappen, his teammate, but that was because Red Bull tried something different with Verstappen's qualifying / race first stint, so he was hampered and was knocked out in Q2, and Gasly did not seize that opportunity to get a second row start. And in the Grand Prix, Gasly delivered shocking pace. He finished behind the two Renaults and his teammates. Not good enough. Now, of course, Max is a very good driver, or a very, very good driver, and probably was always going to finish ahead of Pierre. But the fact that Pierre was comfortably beaten, really, by the two Renaults says a lot. In France, his home race, Gasly was shocking from start to finish. In qualifying in Q2, he qualified on the softer compound of tyres. 8 drivers ahead of him that qualified into Q3 qualified on the medium tyres. That illustrates alone how shocking Gasly's pace was that weekend. And in the race, he was beaten by both McLarens, both Renaults and Kimi Raikkonen, and was lapped by race winner Lewis Hamilton. Now, of course, the Mercedes was ascendant that weekend, but he's in a Red Bull. His teammate Max Verstappen finished P4. Gasly on track finished P11. Yes, he did finish P10, but that was due to Ricciardo's penalty. Gasly, apart from that, had nothing to take away from the weekend. Then comes Austria. In qualifying, Gasly qualifies P9 after a mistake in his second run. His teammate Max Verstappen qualifies P3. Then comes the race, and Verstappen obviously got a dreadful start, and Pierre did get in front of him. And although he was overtaken at the end of lap 1, at the end of the race, he finished a full lap behind Max Verstappen. A lap around Austria during the race is about 65 plus seconds, between 65 and 70 seconds. Over the course of 70 laps, he lost between 65 to 70 seconds to his teammates. Dreadful. Yes, Verstappen's drive was literally stunning. However, that performance from Gasly was farcical, really. Now, to be fair to Pierre, by Christian Horner's own admission, he was promoted a year earlier than what Red Bull intended to do with him. And experience learning your trade at such a tender age of your F1 career is pivotal. And to be fair to Gasly and Red Bull, this was a more makeshift move. Ricciardo left Red Bull, and Red Bull basically chose Gasly via process of elimination. To me, it was for what was going to fit the team and Max Verstappen best. But when you look at Gasly's 2018, it wasn't stellar, but it was far from dreadful. He delivered some stunning performances, like at Bahrain, P4 in a Toro Rosso, like P6 in Hungary. Those are the performances that really attract the big teams. But like most rookies, he did make mistakes, but the issue is with Gasly, he was way too inconsistent. At the start of the season, Gasly was brilliant, but in the second half of the season, I do honestly feel that Brendan Hartley, his teammate at the time, was on a par with him consistently at certain races. Okay, maybe on the whole in the second half of 2018, Gasly was still better than Hartley, but considering how poor Hartley was last year, I still think the second half to Gasly's 2018 was very much underwhelming. But if Gasly was to be dropped from Red Bull, who would replace him? Carlos Sainz is a very quick driver and initially would come to mind. However, he does not have the greatest relationship with Verstappen, and I said earlier that the harmony is key for Red Bull with both Honda and Verstappen at the team. And for me, Sainz does not get along with Verstappen, and I think that would be a step backwards, really causing a lot of harm in the team. Maybe not like Senna Prost level, but a bit too much harm considering that Honda are new boys to Red Bull. Or in other words, Max and Carlos don't exactly get on. And just by the way, just to say, I do think Carlos deserved that Red Bull seat for this year. Next up, Alexander Albon. Now, although he has driven a great 2019 so far, I still think his pace is a bit inconsistent. And very much like Gasly, I think he would be a bit too much of a risk for Red Bull, and I don't think he's learnt his trade just yet. And finally, Daniil Kvyat. Now, I will always say this, Daniil Kvyat was treated very harshly by Red Bull to get dropped in 2016. Now, Kvyat getting dropped wasn't basically the catalyst, it was basically Red Bull wanting to promote Max Verstappen to the senior team. And for Horner and Helmut Marko to bring back Kvyat to Red Bull at the top team, I think that says that they're admitting that they were wrong to drop Kvyat. And in all honesty, I think Helmut Marko would be the last person to admit he was wrong. I mean, he is so stubborn. However, as much as Kvyat has really impressed me in 2019, I do still think it will be a risk, because I do see Kvyat as an unpredictable driver. As much as he is very talented, I think it would be still a big risk to take him on again, considering that the bridges probably are still going to be burnt between Red Bull and Kvyat. So taking all those variables and putting them into place, do I think Gasly will be dropped by Red Bull? For me, no. Horner admitted Gasly was promoted a year earlier than they would have wanted to, and that is very costly. And it says to me that Gasly was always the option for Red Bull. And I think they've learnt from the past, if they do turn against their options, that will definitely backfire, and that's what's basically transpired this situation. This would never have happened if they dropped Kvyat in the first place. So I think Red Bull have somewhat learnt their lessons, but they're just left in a really scratchy situation. I mean, on merit, Gasly should have been dropped after Canada. However, Formula 1 doesn't work on merit. There are so many variables, and I think that's really what's going to keep Gasly's seat, the fact that Red Bull don't want to turn against themselves. So I don't think Gasly will be dropped in 2019 or for the 2020 F1 season, but you never know. However, just quickly guys, I just want to mention a few things regarding my last video. Now, firstly, thank you for whatever you did towards the video, either commenting, liked or disliked, or even subscribed. It is massively appreciated, the fact that you do listen to my videos and do recognise my opinions, even if you disagree with them. I mean, I was called a Hamilton fanboy, and I don't think I am, considering I give Vettel a lot of credit, and here in Britain Vettel does get a lot of hate, but yeah, thank you for whatever you did towards the video, even if you disagreed with me. But that's the beauty of me making these videos, is the fact that I want you guys to not necessarily disagree with me, but maybe have different views on things. And that's what sport and life is about in general. Two opinions, like disparate opinions, and you elaborate upon them. And mine was totally different to you guys, and I do understand it was controversial, and it does seem a bit typical that I am British, and Lewis is British as well. But that's the beauty of these videos, and whatever you think of them, I'm sure that, you know, they can be different. But yeah, also thank you guys for over 50 subscribers, for reaching 50 subscribers. It does mean a lot, it does impulse me to make these videos, and yeah, thank you very much, it is heavily appreciated. But guys, that is it for today's video. Please like this video, comment down below what you thought of this video, and please subscribe to the F1 Tube YouTube channel. But until next time guys, see you later.